Captain Spirit is here!
Can you tell us who your superheroes are?
My parents are my biggest heroes.
Look, not everyone is born to be a basketball star. Not even me. You're probably gonna change the world.
Spirit of my silence, I can hear you, but I'm afraid to be near you.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all going well. The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit has finally released. I've played it a couple of times and I wanted to share my first impressions. Basically, I liked Captain Spirit. It's a very short experience that through its nostalgic art style and excellent soundtrack choices puts you right back into the world of Life is Strange that we all know and love. But it does so in a very different way. This experience is unlike any previous Life is Strange game in both narrative and gameplay, even compared to Farewell, which I guess is the closest thing you could compare it to. So at the same time, it also serves as a small window, showing us what kind of new direction Donut are going in with Season 2. Along with this, I did have a few things that bothered me a little here and there, and I'll get into those a little later, but right now, let's get into the nitty-gritty, starting with story.
Amethyst and flowers on the table.
So Dad, what's the big plan for today?
Big game plan. Even though we'll probably lose again.
This self-contained and really personal story in Captain Spirit revolves around the relationship between our new protagonist Chris Eriksen and his father Charles Eriksen. And just like in previous Life is Strange titles, we can explore this relationship in a number of different ways, either through dialogue options with Charles, or interacting with certain objects in special ways, or exploring the world. The difference in Captain Spirit is that now the story is more non-linear. The level is completely open to us right after our first conversation with Charles, and it encourages us to explore the environments more than in previous titles. And what this non-linear design allows us to do is discover multiple aspects to Charles and Chris's relationship, uncover a bigger picture as to why these characters' lives are the way they are, and how both of them are dealing with the loss of another family member, Emily Eriksen, who was Chris's mother. Let's start with Charles, who we know has turned to alcohol to take care of his grief. However, as we explore the house, we can see that he's not taking good care of himself or Chris. There's old food left in the fridge, dirty clothes that haven't been washed, beer cans littered everywhere, the living room, the bedroom, even in his garage. Donut always managed to pack their worlds with some incredible environmental detail, from the cracks in the walls, to the coffee marks now engraved in the kitchen table, to the stains on the bed sheets. Every detail paints a more in-depth picture of Charles and his story. He isn't coping with the loss of his wife, he's abusing alcohol, that issue has caused him multiple financial issues, he's neglecting basic household upkeep, and at the same time, neglecting Chris, sometimes to a very extreme extent. Chris is a charming 9-year-old kid who has had to do some very quick growing up and clean up after his father. We can throw away his beer cans, clean out the fridge, wash Charles's clothes, clear the porch of snow, really mundane household tasks that, as game interactions, they're not the funnest thing in the world. However, it does serve to show just how much responsibility is now required of Chris. So, one way Chris makes these new responsibilities fun for himself is by escaping into his imagination, where he can be his own superhero, Captain Spirit. As Captain Spirit, these mundane tasks become something magical to Chris. He's not just throwing away his father's beer cans, he's pulverizing them with his matter-bending mind powers. When he's turning on the water heater because his father's neglecting to get it repaired, he's facing this terrifying smoke monster. When he tries to vaporize Charles's whiskey bottle, he's trying to help his father, like any superhero would. Everything that Chris interacts with gives us some new insight into the relationship with his father and how Chris perceives that relationship, and it's done so in a way where it takes advantage of the wonderful imagination someone like Chris has. Something I really love about this aspect of Chris is just how much of his imagination and his reality blend together. His arch-nemesis Mantroid is a combination of the street names his mother had a fatal car crash on, Mantle Street and Asteroid Drive. Now, I'll admit, I didn't realize that at all in my first playthrough, that was pointed out to me online afterwards, but something I did pick up on in subsequent playthroughs is how Chris pretends to go into his father's car and crashes into Mantroid's home planet to face him.
Too late! Emergency! SOS! Crash landing! Ah!
Right after this happens, Chris wonders how many ships, or cars as they are in reality, Mantroid has crashed before.
I wonder how many ships Mantroid has crashed on this planet.
I thought this was a really great way to show that Chris understands to a great extent the circumstances of his mother's death and wonders if anyone else has died on the same road. Something that I think is really important to note here is that it's Chris who asks the question and Captain Spirit that answers in his more confident voice.
I wonder how many ships Mantroid has crashed on this planet. Never mind. I landed safe.
And it's this line from Chris that I think perfectly encapsulates how he perceives his reality right now and Captain Spirit as a whole. Chris has lost a parent who he loved dearly. His other parent isn't taking the best of care for him to the point of abuse, and he's had all these adult responsibilities forced upon him in an environment that's run down and falling apart. Chris is not in a good situation for a 9-year-old to be in, but as any kid his age, he has a hope and optimism that so many grown-ups lack in the face of tragedy to say, it's okay. He's a superhero. He's keeping the stairs safe from snow and vaporizing the evil beer cans and facing monsters to help do the dishes. Despite all the perils that Mantroid brings into his life, he's landed safely. Despite losing his mother, he's okay. Chris, with the help of Captain Spirit, turns his dire situation into an awesome adventure. And these adventures are presented in such a wonderful, fantastical way that they do a great job of masking this harsh reality that's anything but awesome. Life is Strange has always had this wonderful combination of lighthearted comfiness and depressing melancholiness that intertwine between each other. A beautiful, small Oregon town with a dark underlying secret, an exciting first love that isn't as lovely down the line, a childhood friendship that ends on a tragic note. Captain Spirit embraces this same polarization with its themes in a new, imaginative way, showing us how the imagination of a young boy who, regardless of everything in his life, helps him be heroic and brave. But as any kid his age who loses a parent, the reality is that he's just a kid who really misses his mom.
I forgive you, mother. I can hear you, and I long to be near you. But every road leads to an end.
If there's one thing Donut nailed with Life is Strange and built upon in Captain Spirit, it's creating atmosphere. This moment of calm, or as it's now called, special view for some reason, was fucking awesome. Not only because I just really love these kinds of scenes, but that Donut have taken them a step further in Captain Spirit, incorporating so much more variety and movement in the cinematography. So much so that these moments themselves now tell their own story, shot after shot. Moving from Chris to Charles to his trophies to the kitchen, the bathroom, Chris's room, and then back to Chris. It's a small shame, however, that it's only this moment of calm that has this kind of visual storytelling. The one in Chris's treehouse featuring Deathwing Dignity doesn't have any special structure with its cinematography, and works like other previous moments of calm. I still love it, but it's nowhere near this moment in Chris's room. Other than music, there's a lot of other things in Captain Spirit that contribute to the atmosphere. The excellent lighting that's carried over from Season 1 that gives such a warm feeling to the house on this really cold day. Smaller details like the way the floorboards reflect the light from the windows, the dripping snow from the gutters, the subtle sway of the trees in the wind, everything just works together to create this wonderful, lively mood throughout the world. And all of this is amazing, but music is another story entirely when it comes to building atmosphere in Life is Strange. Whether it's with chill, composed guitar in Blackwell, to its more somber moments in the junkyard, to its more personal reflections in Before the Storm. And now these moments can mean something more, taking us on a small journey through the lives of these characters in a way only music can take us. So, just like Season 1, Donut managed to achieve something special with its atmosphere and story. But it's the little touches in a Life is Strange game that really make it special, and there's plenty of them in Captain Spirit. Like how Charles acknowledges you standing in front of the TV, blocking his view.
You're the worst invisible man ever.
Or how as time goes on, his whiskey bottle will actually become more empty with each drink he takes. Or if you try to outsmart Donut and go straight to breakfast before Charles even has a chance to call you, he'll acknowledge this and it'll be a good interaction.
I see it, but I don't believe it. I didn't even have to call you. What is going on here?
The food smelled good.
Kind of reminds me of how Donut planned ahead with this interaction between Max and Chloe in episode 3. We can choose to go in either locker room, then rewind time like we did in the previous chapter, and get this cool little dialogue with Chloe.
Presto! Dude, it's getting old. Try and dazzle me with another trick.
Captain Spirit also has its share of throwbacks to Season 1 and surprisingly Before the Storm as well, like this little drawing of a ninja on a dragon, referencing this famous line.
You could have a flamethrower, an army of robot ninjas, and a motherfucking dragon on a leash in there, and I'd still kick your ass.
Or this cool little camera angle of Chris while he's on the treehouse that mirrors Chloe and Rachel's ride on the train. Or this book from Mr. Jefferson. Of everyone you could have referenced from Season 1 Donut, it had to be him. Coming back to the more technical side of the smaller details, of course I can't forget to mention the awesome snow effects when you walk outside, and Chris makes this little trail behind him. I always appreciate it when developers invest their time into this kind of detail. It makes the world feel so much more reactionary and creative. I've seen some pretty cheeky drawings from you guys over the last week. And there's just so many more of these little details and touches outside of things you can normally interact with that just make exploring this world so much more rewarding and interesting. I'll probably make a separate video with all the other cool details I found, and if there's anything interesting that you've spotted, let me know and I'll check them out.
Awesome!
Moving on, as awesome as I think Captain Spirit was, there were a couple of issues I had with it. Issues that I don't think would bother literally anyone else, but it's me, and they bothered me enough to include them in this video. One of them being that there's no longer 3 different save files to help you with multiple playthroughs, just one. Which was really strange to me considering Donut are encouraging people to play through Captain Spirit multiple times to actually see everything. They do kind of balance this out by allowing you to jump back into the game and complete the extra objectives you've missed before triggering the ending, but if you wanted to find stuff that's locked behind different decisions, you'd have to overwrite your original save and do things differently, make different choices, and those choices might have different outcomes in Life is Strange Season 2. Sure, you could just replay it again and redo all your choices from memory of your first playthrough, but I just don't think it's the same. It wouldn't be keeping true to your first time playing Captain Spirit, the first time you made the decisions you made. Another issue I had with Captain Spirit is, unsurprisingly, the facial animation. It's a slight improvement, but I don't think it's as good as it can be. Facial expressions on both Charles and Chris still look pretty wooden and strange. They have their moments here and there, and the lip syncing has definitely been improved, but for the most part it's still pretty dull. To be honest, I think Before the Storm still has some of the best facial animation in Life is Strange, and it pays off. You feel way more engaged with what the characters are saying because it looks like they're actually saying it with a lot of emotion, something that I think is very important for a game like Life is Strange that revolves around character and story. And the last issue I had with Captain Spirit, which really isn't an issue, it's more of a personal thing with me, is relatability. I really liked Chris, and I do feel for him and his situation, but I'll be honest, I didn't find myself relating to him the same way I was able to relate to Max and Chloe. I don't think there was anything wrong with his character or how he was portrayed, but personally I just didn't really have that same connection with him that I did with our other favorite protagonists. This could be down to a number of things, like the age difference. I'm definitely closer to Max and Chloe's age than I am to Chris, and because of that I feel like I can relate to a few more aspects of their lives compared to that of a 10-year-old boy. It could also be because we've really only spent one morning with Chris compared to the 8 days we've spent with Max and Chloe, not to mention the literal years we've spent with them as characters compared to the 2-ish hours we've only had with Chris. So maybe that will change over time when we see him a little more in Life is Strange 2. Or it could just be me, maybe I'm just weird, who knows. And speaking about Life is Strange 2, the last thing I want to mention in this video is Chris's future and his potential superpowers. I'm sure you've all seen the ending. He runs to his treehouse after Charles has a drunken outburst, one of the wood steps breaks off which sends him hurtling towards the ground, only to be saved by mysteriously levitating in midair. He gets up and sees two boys at the Reynolds house who don't seem too fazed that he just did all that. And then after the credits, it's mentioned we'll meet Chris again in Life is Strange 2. Looking at all of this at face value, it seems Chris, much like Max in Season 1, had his supernatural powers activate when something terrible was about to happen, which led to him gently float towards the ground. However, one of the more popular theories I've seen floating around is that it's actually one of these two, probably this kid, who has the power to levitate objects and saved Chris from falling to the ground. This would explain why the kid didn't seem so fazed about Chris just floating in the snow. This would also match up with the events in the bathroom in Season 1. Max witnesses something terrible happen to Chloe, which triggers her time powers to activate, which later allows her to use those powers to save Chloe. In Captain Spirit, the kid witnesses something terrible about to happen to Chris and uses his powers to save him. The only difference here is that the kid seems super chill about actually being able to levitate Chris. It would seem that he's known about his powers long before this encounter, which compared to Max's discovery of her power is pretty interesting. Besides being saved by the supernatural, there's also some other similarities between Chris and Chloe when you compare the two. Both have lost a parent due to a car accident, both have gone through a period of loneliness, both don't have a great home life, albeit for different reasons, so maybe both of them will have a best friend with amazing superpowers that will save their life, probably multiple times. I know that's kind of a weak connection, but considering everything else, I'd say there is a strong possibility that Chris isn't actually the one with superpowers, and instead it's this kid, and we know Donut love their red herrings. Another theory could be that Chris is actually the one with superpowers, and he himself levitated towards the ground. This one doesn't hold much validity and is really just based on my own observations, but throughout Captain Spirit there are a few times where Chris will pretend to levitate an object or crush it with his mind, and with the assistance of his father, actually does.
Step aside, Mr. Eriksen. Captain Spirit is here to recycle.
You better hurry. This can's gonna destroy the town. Man, that was too close.
Charles, for a brief moment, helps Captain Spirit come to life and do something amazing. It's not supernatural, but rather just him playing along. What if, at the end of the game, when Chris falls from the tree, it's his mother helping Captain Spirit come to life for a brief moment and amazingly float above the ground, saving him from a bad fall? More specifically, it would be the spirit of his mother giving him the power to levitate. When Max spotted the butterfly in the bathroom just before she rewound time for the first time, she mentions that the butterfly feels almost like a spirit, and that she can almost feel the air moving around her. I don't know what it's like to levitate, but I imagine it would involve a lot of moving air, kind of like how there's a lot of moving air around Chris. Chuck in one of those theories about spirit animals having some kind of connection to the deceased, and yeah, I think you've got a somewhat solid theory about Chris having powers. I'll probably return to this topic along with some other theories about Season 2 in another video. Anyway, getting back to the original topic of my video, my final thoughts on Captain Spirit, similar to my final thoughts on Farewell, is that I greatly appreciate the opportunity Donut have given us to spend some more time in this world that they've lovingly crafted, and for free as well. As far as I can tell now, I think Captain Spirit is going to be a great introduction into this new story that Donut want to tell with Season 2, while still keeping to its roots with interesting, complex characters, wonderful music, and nostalgic art style. It's beautiful and emotional, and it's just more Life is Strange, something that I am incredibly happy about. Definitely let me know what you guys thought about Captain Spirit. What are your thoughts on Chris and Charles? I didn't talk too much about Charles in this video, so that's something I want to expand on later. I kind of flipped back and forth on him for obvious reasons, so let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.